Okay, and we're live. Just want to do a quick sound check. Can everybody hear us okay? If you can, we would love it if you can chat over to us that you hear us loud and clear and that we're coming in okay, somewhat audible and all that. All right. Sweet, loud and clear. All right, success. All good. All good is always a great situation. Fantastic. So I think that we're ready to get going, and we're going to get started right now just with a quick welcome, of course, for everybody for joining. We really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to come hang out with us. We've got a really exciting topic. We're going to be talking about top data privacy strategies for security professionals by security professionals, which is always important, right? So we have with us two very esteemed colleagues. We have with us Anya, who takes care of information security and also customer operations at Cord. Woo! And we also have Demi, who is the co-founder and CTO and head of security at Panorays, which itself is a security company helping people with third-party risk assessment. And we got a really awesome session lined up, so I think we're going to jump right on into it. I'm going to go ahead and try to share a PDF presentation. So we're going to hope that that works all right. And you guys can let me know if I've done it correctly. Can we see everything okay?
Yes,
All right,
indeed.
I'm 2 for 2. 2 for 2 is always a good place to be. All right, so we're going to jump right on into it. But before we do, just one quick minute about Mine. So Mine, as some of you might actually know, was actually founded by security professionals, by basically people who had very deep roots in the cyber security space. And it was no sort of surprise that they kind of saw the emerging situation about privacy as a consumer, as a professional, as a business, and understood that there was a lot of need in the space for something which was simple and comprehensive and basically going to be able to help companies have a great privacy program, great privacy hygiene, because there's a direct correlation between properly getting your privacy in order and having great security programs. So basically, it's totally joined, and that's why we're so excited to be talking about this and having some awesome sort of conversations. This session is going to be more or less a question answer, fairly casual, moving on. But just one more minute about a little bit what we did at Mine was we went out there and we talked with the smartest people that we could find, people like David Hoffman, who's a professor at Duke University, heading the cyber security and legal area there. And he was actually the privacy officer at Intel. Ari Schwartz, who was the cybersecurity director at the White House during the Obama administration, and Yuta, who actually was a privacy leader at Google, Facebook, and Twitter. So we have phenomenal advisors that we went into this project together with, and the results have obviously been really amazing. What we are doing, just to be clear, and it's going to be a lot about the topics today, is helping people to keep track of privacy regulations first and foremost, because we know that there's more growing regulations, lots of swift changes happening, and the tech requirements continue to increase. And I don't know if people have been paying attention on the news, but the cost for non-compliance is just continuing to rise. Every day it seems that another company is being fined, somebody's forgetting to take care of data retention properly, somebody is not taking a close enough look on exactly how they're handling consent or where that information is transferred to. So it's really important that we are keeping track of these privacy regulations and how we are operating. And let's be honest, the complexity of data governance is going to continue to be there. It's not going anywhere. As tech environments are shifting and are constantly changing, we need to have proper tools. Otherwise, we end up with inadequate data governance. Ultimately speaking, this comes down to control, right, for both privacy and privacy security together, where basically we have the rise in third-party apps and services, which I'm sure Demi can tell us all about, and basically what this means to us, not only from a security perspective, but also as a legal perspective in terms of what are the requirements that we need to have around data transfer, consent management, DPAs, DPIAs, etc. And having high security measures are really important. Both that third-party risk assessment, as Demi can talk to us about, also understanding access, the rights, the usage of these different tools, making sure everything really is in order. And ultimately speaking, why do we think that tooling is important? Because let's be honest, you could always roll up those sleeves and try to do it manually, but the issue is that scalability won't be there for you, which means that as soon as you finish doing a data mapping, as soon as you finish doing an exercise, it's totally obsolete. And let's be honest, you're not going to win any popularity contests pulling developers and people off of really important projects that they need for their career to basically go and check what type of data categories are being used in certain applications, if something is still in use, etc. So why on earth would we do that if we can automate it? Good question. I don't know the answer. Automation is always the key. So basically, what are we doing here at Mine? Just this is the last slide, I promise, and then right to our speakers. We're providing basically a no-code automation solution for privacy and compliance. So we address those governance, risk, and compliance teams' needs by basically providing an effective data governance and ability to control, allowing the ability to identify business and risks and maintenance, compliance, and across all legal requirements and data processing. For legal and privacy, what we were able to do is automate all those legal requirements with strong audits and reports. And security are able to identify sensitive data such as PHI, PCI, PII, and other sensitive info across all their apps and services utilizing our solutions. So we're able to help people to monitor both employee access to sensitive data, where that sensitive data is, how it's being utilized, and essentially help the security in terms of the overall posture and being able to mitigate risks. Lastly, engineers love us. Why? Because we are essentially a no-code solution. Just pop in an API key and you're good to go. So that saves everybody a lot of time and headaches. And marketing, of course, can enjoy because they are usually a major customer of these tools that are capturing consent, that need to use that consent, that need to be able to utilize. So it's across the entire organization, obviously with privacy and security at the center. Let's jump into the topics. Okay, so we're going to have a quick question and answer session, okay, starring our two lovely esteemed colleagues. We're going to start off by just if you could both share a little bit about your companies, what you do, something maybe a little cool and funny that we might not know about you. How does that sound?
Good.
All right. Who would like to get started?
Demi, me, Demi.
I don't mind.
Go for it.
I'll give you the stage.
Okay, right. So hello everyone. My name is Anya and I work for Cord. So Cord is essentially a messaging tool for finding work. So we connect companies with people within tech and product to find work directly. So companies use us to hire their engineering teams and people use us to not have to go through a recruiter. So it's kind of cutting the noise of recruitment and the cost of it. So what do? I'm the head of the customer operations, so support, trust, and safety, and I work within the tech and product team on information security. Something funny about me? I don't think there is anything funny about me, but the fun thing about the Cord in general, I suppose, is that it's kind of like the first time that I came and I was like, okay, these people are really passionate. Like, they want to make recruitment better. So that's me and that's my story. On to you, Demi.
Well, thank you very much for that. Now, quick question, follow. Are you guys making more friends or more enemies with what you guys are doing? Or both? Frenemies?
Only friends. Only
friends. Only friends.
With love.
With love.
All right, Demi.
So hi, my name is Demi. I'm one of the co-founders and also the CTO at Panorays, in charge of security, and some of my role is, I think, really tied with our legal team and legal counsel, mostly in the aspect of managing the whole data aspect in the company and also engagement with our customers, like regularly doing sales, and every deal actually incorporates a lot of the aspect of data privacy, security, and not only financials. I mostly come from the background of engineering, in charge of technology in the company also, and different kinds of partnerships. And I'm really involved also with the go-to-market team. So you would say that I'm basically on every sales call when it comes to data privacy and security. So not only when I'm doing this type of assurance on our third parties and managing our third-party risk management program at Panorays, and this is the tool that we also like created. Also on the customers end, I would say, and prospects that we're engaging with, doing all of the sales processes with the legal team and the commercial team.
Wow, so you probably have seen it all, I'd imagine.
Unfortunately, yes.
And one thing that's cool about you,
There's nothing cool about me. Really,
you guys are so humble. It's not funny, you know. You gotta like, oh, there's nothing interesting about me. I'm like watching paint dry.
Okay, I'll try something. I know 4 languages. Okay?
4 languages.
And 4 totally different languages: Russian, Georgian, English, and Hebrew.
Wow. That's
I don't know how funny it is, but it is a fact.
So it's more like Demi James Bond Ben-Ari. Okay. International man.
Sounds good. 007.
There we go. So now we got another quick question. All right. This one is going to be, where does data privacy fall in your company? So essentially, you know, is it a separate function and responsibility, or is it more of a combined role? Let's start with you, Anya.
So that's an interesting one. On kind of like on our side, you could say that the data privacy is very much a combined role. It's very much spread across the company. I think something that a lot of people in small startups can relate to is that very often once you grow, you kind of have a tough decision to make. Do you hire a security person or do you hire a privacy person once the time comes? So usually the answer ends up being security, because it seems a bit more pertinent to the senior leadership team. So we kind of like jumped into that role, and then you realize that there is this entire area that people generally assume is the same thing, which very much is not. So a lot of those responsibilities kind of get added on, which is the situation with me, and kind of then the approach became to make sure that everyone is involved in the process. And so the easiest way to answer that is that it's part of kind of every team centralized within 2, 3 people who manage mostly the security and legal side. And then we make sure that whenever it's a kind of sales related thing, then the head of kind of jumps in. So that's how it is now.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And Demi, is it similar for you as well, or what's it like over there at Panorays?
So I would say it was kind of an evolution, because we're a security company. So we started security first, right? Eventually ending up with all of the security practices that we've implemented with tooling, processes, and different kinds of certifications, looking on, firstly, compliance frameworks, I would call that, the SOC 2, ISO, and all of that for our own security assurance, and also supporting various data privacy regulations, right? GDPR, CCPA. If you look on South Africa, it's POPIA and PDPA in the East, etc. And I can talk on and on. And due to the fact that every sales process that we engaged with, and also different kinds of regulations engaged with various data privacy regulations, we incorporated privacy. So firstly, it was with our external legal counsel when we were a small company. Right now, we have 2 legal counsels internal, right?
Yeah.
So I'm working closely with the legal team, although they do not like report to my direct department. And on every deal, we work closely with the commercial team, right? When we're engaging, when doing something and something changes, we need to adapt, right? We need to adapt our security program, our privacy program, according, and even sometimes the software as architecture even.
So it sounds to me like there's almost like, I'd say almost like 3 different components. There's obviously security, then there's obviously sales, and then in this case you have as well legal, and then sometimes you have the flip of it, where rather than sales, you have procurement. So security, legal, and then procurement when you guys are on the buying side versus the selling side. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, that's exactly why I kind of like classify that as the commercial team, right?
Right.
Either on the receiving end or on the kind of like service end.
You get to break the bones, or your bones being broken. I'm just kidding.
We fight a lot.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. So that makes perfect sense. That obviously depends on the nature of your business. If you're doing a lot of real B2B enterprise sales like Panorays, then security is actually coming in on the selling side, as well as on the receiving side when they're procuring. And also companies which are a little bit more, I'd say, you know, almost business to consumer in some senses, right, Anya, that you guys are actually a little bit more taking it as a core part of almost like the product, right? In terms of things are going in. So that makes perfect sense. And that's really interesting to see how that security and privacy function is going to really change depending on that motion, but it's always there. It's always there, and it's the same things that need to be done. Cool. So that's really awesome. So just a quick question, and it's kind of almost been somewhat answered, but let's just, drive it in a little bit more. So what kind of, we'll say daily responsibilities do you really feel that you hold as part of being the security team or heading that security team? What do you think, Demi? Like, could you just give us I know you talked about it briefly, but just outline a couple of those important pieces.
So at first, I would mention that sort of like mapping our data and understanding and getting visibility to that incorporates both processes in legal and security. Okay, so firstly, like we mentioned, on every deal that we kind of discuss, on the receiving end, and also sometimes when you're purchasing something, you have to incorporate both because of legal documents, right? In every transaction, probably you will have some kind of DPA, especially when you're engaging with some kind of data provider, or maybe they have internal access that eventually they end up of accessing your own internal data that is probably classified to a certain point, if it's PII, or maybe even if it's not confidential at all. And then when you have all of these types of engagements, you have to do some kind of process, right? You have to create an understanding, create an agreement, even sometimes a privacy agreement of confidentiality or something like that. And of course, understanding what will happen eventually if a data breach will occur, right? And then create, I would say, surrounding mechanisms to kind of support all of these, like what will happen afterwards, right? And today you're engaging with so many external entities, right? Every type of engagement with a business partner, or it can be any vendor of yours, or maybe even a subsidiary company of yours, right? That holds data, processes data, and you have like almost zero visibility on that most of the times because everything was kind of manual, right? The legal department had agreed on something and eventually ended up of writing that in a document that nobody reads,
right?
Which is kind of sad. Especially when you're talking about the masses, right? You're engaging with dozens, hundreds, maybe even there are companies that are engaging with thousands of entities a month. Without proper automation, you can't even achieve any coverage.
No way. Yeah. Okay, so that definitely makes sense. And how about you, Anya? What about for you?
I think it's kind of similar, because something that came up, which I absolutely agree with, is that at the end of the day, everything new that happens has security and privacy involvement. So whenever we have a new customer, or whenever we have a new user, because it's both B2B and B2C, whenever we have a new employee, or if we are buying something, there has to be an input from both security and privacy to kind of push it through. So the kind of the daily responsibilities to making sure is that, well, on one hand, the security risks are always mitigated, then privacy is in order. Mm-hmm. If anyone asks questions, we also have to respond to that. So it suddenly kind of like becomes a part of pretty much every team, every process, and it piles up.
Yeah, it sounds like having a tool is pretty required at a certain point in order to, So just a quick sort of follow-up, right? Because obviously that can become a real full-time, heavy, role, So basically just wanted to kind of ask, practically speaking, how do you manage, the fact that you have a role which is, having multiple aspects to it? How do you prioritize? How do you ensure that, you're able to get everything that you need to done?
I mean, well, you touched on that, which is a tool. And also how you can kind of, the first question that we always ask is, can we automate it?
Okay.
So in a way, once you kind of start realizing the amount of things, like the scale, which is, maybe I won't really reinvent the wheel by saying this, but the scale never gets smaller, it only gets bigger.
Right.
So at some point you need to kind of find a workflow that reduces the amount of things that you have to do, that you can also trust that what it will do will be accurate. So streamlining is kind of like the buzzword that I always just try to harass everyone with. Let's streamline the process.
So speaking of that, since I think you almost started to kind of answer my next question, I'll just jump on in. So what was it that you kind of walked yourself through when you said, okay, I know that I need a tool, I need to do something? Were there certain things that were really critical to you as you started your search? Because you did a pretty comprehensive search, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Traumatic memories. I suppose kind of like the three main things. That the first one for me was as little dev work as possible.
Right.
Kind of once again coming back to the original question, is that the thing with startups is that you have no capacity to do things. So something that would require as little implementation as possible, so that engineers can keep on working on features on the sprints
Right.
that they're currently in. And then another thing was kind of flexibility with, so I'm talking right now about specifically like data sources, where you're going to pull the data out to find out where information is.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of being able to be flexible with it. And, you know, if a tool is no longer used, a new one is being used, you can kind of jump in at that on. The integration can be built kind of almost ad hoc, which is great. And then kind of the ability to move things over later. So if you have many channels, as is usually the case, being able to still follow them but centralize them in one place. That was sort of my must number 3.
So if I remember that, so that's little implementation,
Yes.
flexibility for the changing environment,
Yeah,
and centralization.
pretty much.
Nice. I like how we were able to hit 3. I always like it when things are in 3.
It's a good number, isn't it?
It is, and it's the Irish, Catholic in me, right? Of Boston, I can't deny it. All right, cool. So, and for you, Demi, just what kind of was it that was critical for you? What was it that you were looking for when you thought, all right, time's for us to go ahead and do something?
So it will be both on the data mapping aspect, I would say on the discovery end, right? Anya kind of like mentioned that, especially in the large scale, when you basically want to create a plug type of integration that actually identifies a lot of things, and then create a due process afterwards, because our platform actually like automates the whole like rest of the process of engagement, both on the sales end and the procurement end. I need that, because right now I need to understand firstly the risk that is entitled out of that type of relationship, right? Third-party integrations, third-party apps, third-party data providers and processors, and then do a due process afterwards, because everything is transitive. I
Right.
need my engagements to be on par with my own security practices for me to be able to do some kind of engagement with my customers also. So because of that, if I don't have proper automation, and Anya mentioned that about notifications, about entities that we're not engaging anymore and hold our data, etc. So all of these things I need to identify prior to engaging with them and doing some kind of process, right?
Right.
And again, most of our companies are one man, one women shows, right? Especially when we're engaging with other entities internally, and we get the responsibility. And if we have the privilege of having a team, the team still needs to collaborate on some kind of platform, right? Excel spreadsheet don't work, and eventually you end up of getting a cap that you arrive to in the matter of like mapping, etc., and even understanding on an ongoing basis whatever changes. Because right now, assuming I did a process right now, I mapped something even manually, right? Everything is changing on the ongoing
Right.
basis, on daily basis, even in the amount of minutes, right? And eventually, if you don't have proper alerting and creating visibility with proper automation, probably will be blind.
So we're doing a lot of talking about mapping, which I absolutely love. But I want to take it back 1 second because, for example, I imagine at Panorays, you probably don't get so many privacy requests, right? You're a
Yeah,
business to
not too much
business.
because it's B2B sales.
Right. Now, Anya, on the other hand, you probably get a whole lot more, right? So wondering about that requirement, because obviously it's great that, Panorays has something in place. So when they get one every, few weeks or so, they're able to process it very quickly and easily. But Anya, for you, where you potentially have much more volumes just because of the scale in which you guys are, engaging people on your platform, how is it that you kind of go about that? What were you doing before? Can you tell us a little bit about what bringing tooling into the process did for you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it made things easier. That's the short answer. But I think at first we kind of tried to keep up with all of the different requirements, different types of things. And when you have multiple channels, different types of customers, so B2B, B2C, and about 4 different channels, then that's kind of becomes a bit of a headache if you also have 2 other roles.
Right.
So first thing that we did, which I guess for me came from like the security angle, which is just adapt to the strictest regulation that's possible.
Right.
And that kind of became the golden rule for everything. So like the vast majority of any like access or deletion requests or any other kind of privacy right request comes from within the either EU or UK GDPR areas. But if we ever get different, someone who is located in a different location, we just treat it the exact same way. So say timelines, same amount of information provided. And that kind of made everything easier because whoever's trained and has to deal with things does not have to also worry about, okay, what timeline am I working with? What do I have to do? So adjust to the strictest thing possible. And that kind of made everyone a bit calmer as well. Because once again, if you kind of look at it through the security lens, whenever possible, you try to do as much as you can, because that's how you're going to mitigate the risk. So would kind of like treat privacy the same way, just mitigate the risk as much as possible. And by kind of integrating a tool to do that, you no longer have to look in 50 different places.
Yeah. It totally makes sense. I mean, just what we're seeing is that, regardless of what business you are, all of a sudden an event can happen, God forbid, but all of a sudden people can start sending you data subject requests because they might just become more interested and more aware because an influencer has said something, or because there is some sort of an event, or there can be changes in, the demographic that you're working with, that they all of a sudden say, I'd like to clean up after myself more. And I think it's great for all of us as individuals to enjoy these, rights, but then we as companies want to be able to also equally provide that. So once we have automation, it's great because it's like no lost sleep over it. It's all there. Cool. So next question. This is for you, Demi. As CTO of Panorays and the head of security, how do you decide what falls under the security team responsibility versus legal and compliance? Interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah. So because it's incorporated with each another, so basically when we get a request, it mostly comes to me to create some kind of assurance, okay? Either on the receiving end or on the kind of like procuring end, I would say, okay? And eventually we need to firstly classify. So the classification, the technical thing gets to me because we're in charge of all of the information security systems, etc. And when I need to give permission to somebody or something like that. Eventually, when we end up of engaging commercially, it goes to the legal team, right? Because right now we did the whole like heavy lifting on our own with proper automation, and eventually show, or at least get some kind of transparency of what type of data is being processed. Right now, once we have all of the features that we're processing with that entity, we can discuss whatever risk that is imposed by that type of relationship. And then it goes to legal, right? And then you review the commercial terms. You need to understand what kind of liability has the vendor, the engaging entity, and what type of liability you have in the security aspect. Because right now, if the data is not confidential, it's not much of a hustle right now, right? But if it's really confidential information, they have strict access to your internal entity or maybe something like that, then, like you said, when something happens, right, you need to respond in a different manner. So then we will create different kinds of security mechanisms and measurements to do this type of relationship in the most secure manner. And of course, cover ourselves as much as possible in the legal aspect. Because right now, if there is no ability to actually achieve these security standards, right now, maybe the insurance part or maybe legal part of liability will come in hand right now in the contract itself.
Yes, it sounds like, you have the contract aspect. You also have the tooling aspect where the DPIA, the business impact, the data privacy aspect is really important to understand exactly what are those impacts that are going on. Has it been assessed? Has it been noted? And it sounds like that's something which, again, just really requires, I'm going to go ahead and use that buzzword, automation. So following up on that, just a last question for you, Demi. maybe a couple more, but just a quick question on that. Automation is such a big buzzword, and both of us come from kind of a little bit of a development background. I'm more on the customer facing side, you from actually as a user. Automation has always been there when it's coming to performance tests, UI tests, visual regression, et cetera, et cetera. More and more we see automation coming in, whether it's going to be procurement tools, it's going to be security tools, it's going to be privacy tools. But you always need to have some level of a human component, right? So how do you decide that? How much do you trust automation? Where do you put automation at play?
So basically, I trust automation fully because this is the way that we also think in the matter of implementing Panorays, right? You have the masses of third-party interactions. Without proper automation, you won't be able to get an understanding of what type of interactions you have at all, okay? And for me, again, and for my team, basically, okay, it's not only me, it's my team in the security aspect and also the legal team. Collaboration is key, and getting alerts on things that actually matter. So if I won't trust that, I won't be able to actually cover that, right? So
Right.
this is my basic fundamental assumption right now, that automation will help me to get full coverage,
Got
and
it.
automation will also enable me to get only the important things and not create noise.
So if I uncover that, basically you rely on automation to be able to cast the wider net, so that way you don't have to rely on human memory and cooperation. You also rely on automation to capture any anomaly, but then you utilize your team to get the context and
You have
understand if this is then going to be an adjustment to the way that we're practicing, or it really is just something which is a one-time glip or something like that we just need to take in. So you're able to collaborate with your teammates, but you know what's the context and everything by utilizing automation.
and I understood which is the anomaly. Maybe I can sign off on it and not do anything, right? Because we've decided that it's not important enough. Or
Yeah.
maybe a high touch engagement because this is the most risky thing right now to my
Right.
company. And right
Yeah.
now the business might go out.
Okay. Now over to you, Anya. How do you feel about automation? How much do you trust automation? Would you let it drive your car? Would you let it drive the privacy program? What do you feel?
It's again, I keep saying it's an interesting one, don't I? So it is an interesting one in that I always kind of trust it, but with a caveat. But it's sort of a tricky one in that it should never a tool can never replace a functional strategy for how you manage things. If you kind of don't have an idea of what you're doing, then and just buy a tool instead because someone told you that it's easier, then it's not really, it might not work. So it should maybe never become your head, but it should absolutely become your hands once you have the head. If we want to do a little metaphor here. So if you kind of implement a strategy of exactly what security means to you, what privacy means to you in a company, what exactly are you trying to achieve, where does it sit within a company, then go for it. Get a tool, automate as much as possible. That's where I come in and ask the question, can we automate it? Because at that point it becomes about efficiency and accuracy for me. If you try to keep track of everything manually, A, you're going to go crazy. B, it's just not going to work. Because something that I suppose evades people a lot is that every single hotfix, every new feature, everything an engineer does, every change to the database, everything kind of can change the location of the data, the type of data,
Right.
what you have, and trying to keep track of that in a spreadsheet, hell. So if you have an automation that only pulls the information that you need, as Demi said, then you kind of don't have to worry about things swapping places, changing things, because you will always have the most accurate kind of picture of what's going on. So yeah, strategy first, and then automate as much as possible.
So kind of understand what you're trying to accomplish, and then get the tooling that's
pretty
there.
much.
It makes
Pretty
perfect
much.
sense. That's the reason why I never get allowed to go to the hardware store before having a long talk with my wife's father, because I'll come back with all these tools that I really don't know what I'm going to use with them. Just
Pretty much.
so always understand from somebody who knows what they're doing, what it is that we're trying to accomplish, and then go out there and get the right tools for it. Makes perfect sense. Awesome. So I think this is going to be probably the last question before we open it up to actually our audience and see if they have anything for us. But what would be any last sort of we'll call it tips and tricks, that you as security professionals who've kind of gone on and accomplished creating a pretty decent privacy practice have to share? What are sort of the privacy, we'll call it gems, that you would want to kind of share with the overall community? How about you, Demi?
I'll start. I kind of mentioned that the collaboration between the internal entities at Panorays is kind of a key factor of actually achieving an efficient program, efficient and also an effective. And when I mean communicating in the same language, okay, and I don't mean English, I mean the same language of actually transferring information and different types of aspects of risk. And once we actually understand that, and again, we have a collaboration between the types of entities right now engaging security and privacy, we'll be able to actually, I would say, kind of react and also respond to the relevant actions needed to be taken with every aspect, if it's commercial, if it's security, and maybe even sometimes a high-touch engagement with that entity because we need to resolve something in the DSR aspect or maybe even on the security risk.
Interesting. And how about you, Anya?
I quite kind of like love the answer already. It's pretty perfect about collaboration. But I think something that I found quite striking when I first started do security is that there is obviously this elephant in the room, is that everyone thinks that security is the blocker, and every time it kind of, the goals are different, and you end up standing in opposition to what everyone else needs. So getting on the same level of understanding of, this is what we're trying to achieve, these are our goals, things become easier. Because at the end of the day, security or privacy can never be a blocker. They should just become a part of the process. So if you shift things to the left, which is like the big buzzword in security right now, move things to engineers so that they don't have to fix things later. We try to shift things to the left in every single team. So if you train someone from the very beginning, if you kind of reinforce this understanding of what security should do, what it means, and the same thing with privacy, then you somehow stop being the blocker and you start being just a part of the process. And that is something I just found to maybe be the healthiest way to do it. And then if you also automate stuff, and if you have tools and resources for people, so that they don't think that they also have a job on top of a job.
No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So just hopping on in, because we got 5 more minutes left, I believe, and we just got a couple questions from the audience. So a question that we got for both speakers is actually, who are the key players and stakeholders at the organization when it comes to data privacy? So we talked about there being a combined role, but really, what are the other stakeholders? Who are the people that are kind of involved?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's really interesting because my first gut instinct answer is just pretty much ahead of every team. But if we're kind of going to get picky, I suppose for us the bigger one is marketing.
Yeah.
And everyone who kind of has to do with user acquisition and sales. So everyone can kind of acquires and then deals with information with data. And then maybe a bit of a rogue answer, but engineers.
Okay.
So for me, it's not an answer that you kind of think people generally kind of gravitate towards sales, marketing. But for me, it's actually the engineers. Because if you're going to embed privacy security from the very beginning, which happens through your engineers building a product, then you're kind of onto a good start. So those are sort of sales, marketing, and the tech and product team are kind of the big 3 for me.
And would you say the same as well for you, Demi, or any other stakeholders?
That, because right now, if I look on the product, yes, I highly agree. It's engineering. It's basically the guys that are creating the product itself, and it's sometimes even the product team. Okay, I would call that the combined effort of the R&D. But because all of our information systems, I would call that, that support the sales effort and the marketing team, etc., is under the business operation team, okay, basically under finance, they are also in charge of a lot of responding to the DSRs and maybe even like mapping out our corporate data, right? Not only our customer data. So because it's not under the responsibility of the R&D, it's a separate department that we engage with, especially with the security, which is an external auditor, and also the legal team, which is also an external auditor.
Got it. Okay, so we got another question from the audience, which is, data regulations and laws are constantly changing. How do you stay up to date with changes? How do you guys stay up to date with changes? And does mine help you maybe with this, or a little plug for us?
I have a few methods. Basically, I'm firstly involved with a lot of groups, okay, on various platforms. It might be LinkedIn, it might be WhatsApp, or other types of privacy-related things, because the question was around privacy, also
Right.
the security end, and also with our external legal counsel that sends us updates from time to time, especially because they have global operations and we have global operations, but I'm not physically in every region. So because of that, I can't know about things that actually, are updated in accordance of time. We have a quarterly also meeting with our external legal counsel, and some of the discussion is around privacy. So because, as an example, changes in the CCPA and things that we needed to adapt right now, and the timelines to actually achieve all of these goals, or something that we actually set with our external legal counsel, but the internal people actually need to respond to that.
Excellent. And so that's why we created the DPO advisor. Again, another plug for us. So if you want to check WhatsApp groups and things, you can do that, or you can go to my DPO advisor. I'm just kidding. It's important, obviously, to check every place, make sure that everything is aligned. How about you, Anya? Do you have any places that you love to go to? Is there anybody that you follow on LinkedIn or something that's a keychain piece?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. So it's mostly kind of like professional groups. A lot of kind of the agencies within European countries that are responsible for upholding the privacy regulations are an amazing resource, especially for smaller companies. So that's where a lot of information comes from. I have actually utilized the DPO advisor as well.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. So it's
like high five myself. Ooh, all right.
So yeah, it's mostly kind of groups of people who are involved in the sector and kind of going back to the source, so to the people who are managing those regulations on the national level.
Excellent. So this is one actually just for you, Anya, which is, you're based in the UK. So how have recent changes to the new GDPR, Brexit, etc., how has that impacted data privacy with your organization?
Good question. Yes, I feel like we're asked about every single part of the world of how has it changed due to the political choices. Yeah. So the kind of like the good thing is that on a commercial level, a lot of things kind of stayed quite the same. So we do have now a native implementation of the GDPR, the UK GDPR. So kind of like national changes were made, which thankfully a lot of them don't impact our business, because they're more on like the investigative side of it and like police related, which not our part of business. Don't think we'll ever become one. But pretty much we follow still very much the same rules. Thanks to the adequacy decision, we don't have to. The kind of the flow of data is still there between the EU and the UK, and then we just see what's going on and what changes are being made.
All right.
As we go, uncertain times.
Okay. Well, I think we're right pretty much on time. I originally thought it was 45 minutes, so I think that's what we might have sent out. We might have sent out a little bit longer, but if there's any more questions, we definitely have another 5 more minutes, or we let everybody get back to their busy days or their wine in the evening if they're in Tel Aviv like me, or beer, or gin, or coffee, depending on what your day's looking like. Okay, so I think we'll just give 1 more minute. Any other questions that we have for our guests from the audience? Going once, going twice. Sold. Boom. Okay, great. So fantastic having you guys with us. Again, I just really want to thank everybody so much for joining. It has really always been a lot of fun having these webinars. I think we have a pretty awesome community. So here we have, again, a reminder that Anya is over at Cord. So anybody who wants to give that a try, please do. It's a great way to essentially cut out the middleman in recruitment. Sorry, guys, to find fantastic talent. And Demi is the CTO and the co-founder and the head of security over at Panorays, which is a phenomenal tool for third-party risk assessment. We actually use it here at Mine. We love it. It saves us tons of time in terms of providing important information, as well as being able to automate our audits that we do on our vendors. And we also have it, surprise, surprise, as a technical integration. You know, we enjoyed it so much that we actually approached them and we were able to bring that in. So it's a fantastic tool. And if anybody's interested in any of these, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know either on the chat or via email when we send you guys the recording. And we'll be really happy to give you guys any introduction. Okay. And I guess I'm going to just thank you guys all one more time for joining us. Anya, Demi, you guys are rock stars. Keep on rocking.
Thank you. And thank you for creating great technology.
Thank you for plugging. I always appreciate it. So I hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye. Have a great
Bye.
rest of the day.